Welcome to IoTalks, your source for real talks with real builders in the blockchain and IoT industry. I'm your host, Larry. As a blockchain platform, IoTalks is lucky to meet IoT companies, protocols, and dApps from around the world. IoTalks is our way of inviting you into these conversations and bringing you closer than ever to the action. No white papers, no hype, just real talks with real innovators. Today's IoTalks is all about the past, present, and future of connectivity. With new connectivity technologies like 5G and LoRaWAN emerging, the world is now more connected than ever. So how does blockchain fit into this picture, and what's possible at the intersection of blockchain, IoT, and connectivity? We dig into these questions and more with our guests Bruce Lee and Alan Dixon from NKN. Please enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to IoTalks. I'm here with Bruce and Alan from NKN. And we're very lucky to have these guys today to talk about the past, present, and future of connectivity in both the traditional and the blockchain world. So, just to start, you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about NKN.
So I'm Alan Dixon. I'm VP of Business Development for NKN. From that perspective, I kind of focus on trying to build out this blockchain company, in terms of reaching out to service providers, different technology companies, things like that, to really figure out our place in the market.
Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Bruce, and I'm the co-founder of NKN. So basically, we have some really technical co-founders. They do the heavy lifting of building. So my job is to work with Alan to really look at the business and operational side. So Larry, you mentioned what is NKN, right? So NKN is basically a overlay peer-to-peer kind of transmission system that encourage people to share their unused data transmission and connectivity. In return, they will get token reward. Mm-hmm. So fundamentally, that's what NKN is about.
Absolutely, and we'll dive much deeper into that throughout the conversation. But
sure.
I thought this was a great podcast to do because, first of all, we're neighbors in Silicon Valley, good friends that have done proof of concepts before, but also because connectivity and IoT are so interrelated in a lot of ways. And you guys know this firsthand. You guys both kind of came from the traditional enterprise world at Nokia. You guys want to maybe share, what your role in the traditional world was, as well as some of your experiences at Nokia.
Right. So for me, I actually started out as a hardcore engineer at Motorola. So I worked on a lot of mobile network infrastructure, things from base stations and routers and things like that. But at Nokia, I actually moved into more of a partner management and a business development role, where I was really reaching out to a lot of startups, seeing how we could use technologies better in some of the solutions that Nokia had at the time. So I got a chance to look at a lot of different areas, including IoT, including security. We'll talk a little bit about some of the radio type technologies a little bit later. Yeah. But also just an opportunity to see what technologies could do and how those could be bring to market, and how it could really be disruptive for telecom.
Yeah, Alan is a little bit modest. I think he was the product manager for Apple account and for Amazon account as well. Yep. He always get the coolest device first before anybody else see the devices. So that's kind of great to help us to reach out to the large partnership we are going to work on.
Definitely.
Yep. Yeah.
So now it's almost like the flip side. It's almost like startups reaching out to the traditional enterprises, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yep. Yeah, because I think the big companies like the telcos and the equipment vendors, they are kind of, I would say, dinosaur-like. They like to change, but the pace is very slow because of the size of the company, the industry they are in, and the pace of R&D as well, specifically. Yeah. So I think that's really great to shift into kind of a startup mode. For me, it's a bit earlier because I did 2 internal startups with Nokia. So actually, where I met our founder, Yanbo. So I was the kind of the product manager, and he was the tech lead. So it was a really good fit. We worked together on 2 projects for 8 years.
That's great. Yeah. 8 years in the blockchain world is more like 80 years. So, how do you compare kind of those industries? And maybe first talk about, what was that Lightbulb moment that you guys had to jump from traditional connectivity more towards blockchain connectivity?
Right. So I think I'll give an example. The kind of internal venture, Yanbo and I were working together. It's a Wi-Fi product. The idea is to outdoor Wi-Fi product that anybody, small shops or enterprise can put on the street, and they can become a service provider, right? So we did lots of innovation, technology, and everything. But eventually, what failed was the business model, right? So how can a individual or a small mom and pop shop provide connectivity service but still be able to recoup their investment? So once we start to invest into the fintech and also the blockchain in specific, and we think, oh, now we finally find the business model we have been waiting for, combined with the technology innovation, I think now we have a chance to really challenge the big guys in this industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Alan, do you want to share more around the kind of this business model that Bruce is talking about? Like, who are the players in the connectivity industry, all the way from the users to the big telcos and everyone kind of in between?
Yeah. So connectivity today, you're right. You have larger players like the service providers that actually provide connectivity solutions, but now you have different type of technologies in terms of what's happening with IoT right now. There's kind of more, especially in the radio side with LoRa, for instance, which is low power radio, which is more open, to and actually using spectrums that are unlicensed, that can actually be much more disruptive in that sense. So it actually opens up the opportunity for more types of solutions in those kind of areas.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a good starting place there. Yeah.
So IoT and connectivity are more like sister technologies in a lot of ways, right? They kind of enable one another and kind of build out this almost like a network effect in a lot of ways. So, can you talk more around, this connection between the Internet of Things, and obviously, a lot of IoT devices talk to each other through different connectivity standards like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or LoRa, but, what is really the use case for IoT and connectivity?
Right. I think IoT have a kind of unique use case because, first of all, there are billions of humans, but there are trillions of devices and machines, right? And they have very different characteristics. Could be a smart meter which only have a few bytes of data every few hours, right? All the way to autonomous driving cars, we have terabytes of data maybe within a few seconds, right? For example, corner collision avoidance. So it actually have a huge need for a very robust and also shared networking infrastructure. And how can we utilize existing infrastructure, not have to build everything from scratch, right? Because like you mentioned, we have lots of connectivity all the way down to from Zigbee, Bluetooth, all the way to 5G, which is coming up. So at any point in America or in any parts of the world, or most of the parts of the world, connectivity is actually not a problem. So you have one type of connectivity or another. The problem is really the business model is like challenging from being shared. So you can utilize the connectivity at that particular spot at that time. Right. So I think how to utilize all the different underneath the connectivity for IoT purpose to satisfy the billions or trillions of devices. And I think that's kind of a challenge which I think both IoTalks and NKN have a mission to achieve. Yeah.
Definitely. And we've kind of already tried to tackle this mission through some proof of concepts that we've done. So let's take a flashback to October. Seems like so long ago already. Right. We built the great Airbnb of the future use case. Do you want to share with the listeners what exactly that was? Yeah,
so we actually had a chance to collaborate with IoTalks to put together that Airbnb of the future. And the idea was really to kind of look at how you could use the devices in your home and share them with people that you would rent the house to, right? So you could actually unlock the door, you could turn the lights on, you could actually change the temperature, in that house, and you could actually offer that as a service to your guests that are staying at your place. And so we actually put together, using IoTalks' connectivity or IoTalks' interface to IoT devices, using NKN's smart contract capabilities as well as NKN's connectivity to really make that happen. And so we actually were able to take that to a lot of different places. We took it to the Telecom Infrastructure Project Summit in London, went to China, went to Las Vegas, a lot of different great shows and really great feedback on that.
Yeah, right. So like in these kind of interactions, both at conferences and when we talk about this to enterprises, what most interests them about what we brought to the table?
There's a few use cases they are really interested. One is really the security and verifiability. So one use case actually from the medical industry is the so-called panic button for elderly care, right? So you have this button that if somebody you need to call an emergency, those button you can push. But some of the service provider mentioned to us the main challenge is the liability. So when this button is pushed, which is a very rare event, but how can we guarantee it's delivered from each hop in between, right? Actually have to go through lots of hops together, right? Your home connectivity, your internet service provider, and to this panic button service provider, and then to ER room, and all the whole chain of communication. If each step can be verified and secured, and then I think that will work, right? So I think from that point of view, security, verifiability, and also a system that's very robust without single point failure, I think that's the blockchain projects like us bring to the table for them.
So it sounds like the traditional world, the hops that you're mentioning, which is very important to NKN's kind of decentralized network, but it sounds like the traditional world is kind of almost those hops are linear, right? And if one hop fails, there's no pivot points that they can really access, right? So if you guys are trying to change the model to provide those pivot points, it's almost like a teamwork to get data from one point to another.
Correct.
Do you want to kind of explain kind of how
I want to give an example that actually experiment our CTO Elon has done. So he tried to download a large video file from one server to a client, right? And then he discovered the internet routing architecture today is less than optimal. So you get a certain speed, let's say assume like 1 second you can download the data. But by enabling multiple paths by the NKN network, and also pick or even combine multiple paths, we can reduce that by half or even more. So the latency. So that's how we solve kind of the less optimal internet routing problem and give the user much better experience, either faster bandwidth or a shorter latency.
Right. So one thing I was always wondering is you guys come from the traditional enterprise space, right? And when you go back into those kind of enterprise environments, like take us through that meeting. Like what's the pitch?
I don't have been to many of these.
First of all, it's education. They've heard of blockchain. They want to see what kind of use cases really apply for them for service providers. We're talking about that area. So a lot of it is educate them about that, and of course about our solution and how we kind of meet those demands. And there's actually already some use cases that have actually developed for telecom now. Things like identity. Things about, especially things like roaming and billing. Those are kind of use cases that are being really developed that really showcases how blockchain itself can actually help the telecom industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And also, the enterprise might be large, have 50 or 60,000 people. There are maybe 10 or even 5 or maybe 5 people. They're advocates, right? They're deep into blockchain technology. They are technology enthusiasts. They might even have experimented with something. So those are actually our champions to get into the larger organization.
Very rare to find. Once you find a champion at those organizations,
right?
Really solid
there, and actually a lot of service providers do have a small group within them that actually are championing those blockchain projects.
Right. I mean, are they collaborative? Like I've heard that a lot of people are just working on their own kind of initiatives, behind the scenes. It seems like almost many major enterprises have their own blockchain coalitions to really build out or research. So have you gotten a chance to interact with any of those folks? Or?
Yeah, we have. I mean, for example, some of the large telecom carriers, like Telefonica, British Telecom, they all have a group researching that, and so is Nokia and companies like equipment vendors. So I think one of the kind of the idea we had was called the Telecom Blockchain Alliance, right? So we were trying to see if we can pull the resource together and the enthusiasts from each of the company together and work. So that's the reason also why we are part of the telecom infrastructure project, right? So there's a few kind of innovation kind of department from those enterprises. They can come together and build up something together.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's jump more into what NKN is doing, right? So you guys are this P2P decentralized connectivity network that kind of lets people share their unutilized bandwidth, right? So I've been thinking about this kind of equation a lot around the supply and the demand. You have projects like, for example, Filecoin, really hot project for the past few years, but it's almost like the supply is almost a commodity now, storage, right? Decentralized storage, available on IPFS, available on other alternatives. So from your perspective, what is that supply and demand equation, and how do you think about really balancing it?
Right. So I'll start maybe.
Go ahead.
So I think back to the file storage, I think still, even though there's lots of supply, but you still have to pay quite a bit of money if you have lots of data stored, right? Either iCloud subscription or the Google Cloud subscription. If you have lots of video or photos, it can get expensive, even though it's a few dollars a month. So that's one side of it. So I think people do still have insatiable needs of the storage or networking, right? So the needs, I think, is increasing. Let's get back to connectivity. So I think still most of the time I would wish my phones or my laptop Wi-Fi card can have higher speed, right? So I can do my things faster, more efficient. So from that point, I think the demand is still growing, and that's also why people are spending billions and billions of dollars building the 5G network, which is kind of building more capacity. Now, from the supply side, so there are still the existing carriers building out the capacity, right? But this is very much still kind of limited. I think one of the things you can solve even in the short term is how can we unblock those capacity has been wasted today. So most of the network build are for the peak performance. So at any moment, 50 to 60% of network capacity is being wasted, right? So if you can unlock that, then even without investing in new infrastructure, you already have much better performance today. Everybody have, but you need to have this sharing kind of economy or mechanism underneath it to enable that.
Also the crypto economic incentives to really power that. So, you guys have already thousands of nodes kind of deployed running NKN protocol. So tell us about that journey around, how you got started with that and how everyone is contributing to the network.
Right. I think in the beginning, it's of course some kind of technology enthusiast. They just want to try out how things work, just like people in the early 2000s to build their own website, right? Yeah. And then after that, I think we introduced a token incentive mechanism. So even for testnet, the testnet token can be converted to the mainnet token at a certain ratio. So once that economic incentive is in place, I think more and more people start to kind of build their kind of full consensus nodes just for profit purpose, right? Not purely for technology purpose. And but we have to enable those people who are not so technical savvy, right? So that's the reason Alan has been and Elon has been working a lot on the one-click solution, right? On all the cloud platforms, on AWS, Google Cloud,
and DigitalOcean as well.
And so have one click, and we also do it in-house, so you can do one click at home computers. If you have Mac or Linux or Windows 10, you can do one click. And in addition, recently we have been doing lots of Wi-Fi router integration. So now we have at least the open WRT-based routers and 2 other different Wi-Fi routers. You can also have one-click solution. So then it's very low cost of building a consensus node.
So important to make it kind of very easy to use and one click, right?
Right.
You tell us about that journey about getting NKN on AWS and these other cloud providers and kind of what the real purpose is, like what the benefit to the users is for having it in AWS. It's kind of like the balance of centralized versus decentralized a little bit, right?
Well, it is and it isn't. So we saw that a lot of people wanted to run our nodes, but you had to be a little bit geeky to run them, in the early days. There was a lot of instructions. You had to, start up a Linux instance and do a lot of different things to it. So we really wanted a way for people that were just fans of NKN or fans of what we were doing in general that really wanted to participate in that, right? And so by doing so, by having a one-click market or having our nodes in all these different marketplaces, it allows them to run it on whatever platform that they're most interested in, right? If they're comfortable with AWS, they can run it there. If they're comfortable with DigitalOcean, they can run it there. And so we try to make it as easy as possible, such that it literally on DigitalOcean, it is a one-click. You press one button, it launches a droplet, it runs a node, it downloads the code, it runs everything there, and if you're able to get your wallet, you can actually see that actually the incentives come in and actually see how you're getting rewarded for that, and it's a great thing.
I want to add one more point. So because Google and Amazon, they are big companies, right? So to get this legitimacy or the understanding how a full consensus run, right, go through their approval process, talk to the tech team and business team, that's hugely valuable, right? They understand, okay, blockchain is not just like Bitcoin and you mining have to use ASICs, you burn tons of energy. Actually, you can do lots of useful things, but while still provide this full consensus, right? So that's, I think, is very important for us, and because then the Amazon, the Google relationship will help us to build our things in the future.
But you also think about the practical things that are going to be already starting to happen in the traditional world and make more sense, honestly, in the decentralized world. And one of those things is PubSub, which you guys just launched, right? So PubSub kind of is the publish subscribe model where it's almost like 5G in a way. It's like multiple input, multiple output, right? So can you tell us more about PubSub and why it's important for NKN?
I think PubSub, even though it's actually probably most of the developer knows, but it's not a household name, right? So give you a more concrete example. For example, a group chat is a typical PubSub use case, right? The reason is, if I'm part of the group chat, when I'm sending out a message, all I need to know is the group name is called IoTalk, right? Not all the people inside, because the people in it might be coming and leaving, right? So I don't have to send individual message to everybody, right? Same with the people who are on the receiving end. So that's one use case. And if you look at most website and smartphones today, the smartphone app, they always have a chat bubble, right? Do you want to have a advice about buying the things, or do you need a technical support, right? So those chat bubble typically are run on top of PubSub service, and that's one. And then another thing is probably related to IoTalks, right? So the IoT perspective. So all IoT devices providing or creating a real-time stream of data, and that data can be consumed by different things. Could be the user have a smartphone, want to monitor it. Could be a back-end machine learning algorithm try to figure out the best things, algorithm out of those data, right? So then if you have a PubSub kind of service, then you can decouple the send and the receiver, so for IoT data and control. And the last one is kind of real-time price information. Could be for crypto token price information, or could be for stock market information. So that enable a very fast real-time message distribution between publisher and subscriber. So those are the concrete use cases that PubSub enables. And also we think NKN is quite uniquely kind of suitable for this purpose, because we are decentralized, and we're a communication network, right? So we are born to be multi-point to multi-point message sending and receiving.
PubSub in the context of IoT, how does that really meld together? Is my analogy of 5G MIMO kind of similar?
A little bit like that. I mean, as Bruce was talking about earlier, I mean, definitely with IoT, you can have like a lot of different sensors out there, because we're talking about millions of billions of different devices, where you could actually have them publish data that could be shared among a lot of different groups. You know, you could have anything from municipalities to enterprises being able to access that data and use that data for different purposes, different subscribers. So I think it's really a powerful tool in that regard.
Definitely. And going back to that question around, one thing I think a lot about is, or one question we get a lot is, we know the use cases, right? And some of them are more exaggerated than some, just for marketing purposes, but when it really comes down to defining the business case, right, whether it's cost savings or revenue generating or kind of protecting that from that tail end catastrophic data breach or something like that that blockchain is somewhat attributed to, how do you think about the business of connectivity, and especially, as some older kind of connectivity types are being more commoditized, how do you think about presenting your solution as the future?
Right. So I think some of the kind of tangible kind of benefits is one of them is really because we have so many nodes present at the global level, right? So every node is kind of edge node, very close to the people who are using the application, right? So by that alone, you can actually have very good performance, both in terms of throughput and also latency, right? So that people can actually feel very tangibly. The second is really cost. I think cost alone is not the solution, but cost is a big factor, right? Because I was running a small in-house messaging application when we were in Nokia, and we only have maybe less than 100 daily active users. They're paying Amazon Web Service maybe more than $5,000 a month, right? So, but in our case, to do the decentralized message distribution, for example, because we got rid of the server and all the nodes are already being incentivized by the mining economy already, right? So they are kind of fixed costs already covered by the mining reward. So any money they make out of the value-added service like PubSub will be pure profit for them, right? So from that point of view, we can compete with existing solutions with a much lower, maybe 10 times lower or even less kind of price point.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So we talked a lot about the past and also the present. Now let's talk more about the future, right? You guys have definitely a lot of interesting things coming up. The mainnet, a lot of different things. But before we dive into that, I wanted to talk more around, what's going on in the future of the connectivity industry. We alluded to some of these revolutionary kind of connectivity standards. I'm not sure if revolutionary is the right word, but 5G is coming. new types of radio, kind of LoRa technologies. What's your take on where the industry is trending and what people are really digging their teeth into these days?
Well, if you were just to type something on Google, it would be 5G.
Yeah.
That's what everyone wants to talk about with 5G.
Exactly.
And to some extent, 5G is an evolutionary step to where we are with LTE and things like that right now.
Minimal latency, really high bandwidth, and kind of ubiquitous kind of connectivity.
Right, and I think at some places, they're still trying to figure out what that killer use case for 5G is going to be, But I think having it out there and having that kind of bandwidth available, that kind of latency available, should spark some new kind of applications that go along with it as well.
Yeah, I saw a really cool demo the other day. It was kind of like a video where one was running on a traditional network and one was more running on like the 5G edge, where it doesn't have to be bound by kind of the theoretical speed of light to travel from server and back, right?
That's true.
So just those kind of edge cases you mentioned,
edge,
are really
edge computing.
Edge computing, industrial IoT is another one that they talk about a lot.
Exactly. So I mean, on another topic of 5G, there's a lot of news not on the technology, but around the perception of the technology. Obviously, with Huawei and their kind of troubles getting their technology into some of the Western countries. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think this is just a escalation of the trade war between the two countries, right? I think either with Huawei or Google or ARM, they are just the companies kind of entangled in the kind of more political kind of fight between the countries. Yeah. So I don't really have more insight on. We are more technology company, but I think what we can enable is really kind of ubiquitous connectivity, right? It doesn't matter which technology you use underneath, but we can enable kind of true peer-to-peer connectivity, regardless of the country or the physical technology used underneath. Yeah.
Would you say NKN's kind of decentralized nature protects against those kind of risks in the future? If, say a rogue state wants to ban some kind of connectivity technology, is a decentralized solution the right way to ensure that?
That's a good question. I don't know if we have a good answer for that. What I would say is we are a global network and we're decentralized in that regard.
Right.
So, and we allow people to run all kinds of data over our network, regardless of, what countries and stuff that go around there.
Yeah.
So, what people choose to do with it, that's up to them.
Got it.
Right. And also, we have recently implemented more security and privacy features. So now all our traffic between the clients are encrypted end-to-end, and also hop-to-hop we can also encrypt. So there are 2 levels of security we added to the system.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
So talking about additions to the system, let's get to the really juicy stuff. Your mainnet's launching this month. Congratulations on that.
We're working pretty hard on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So tell us more about what this means for you guys as a project and what kind of things are you going to be releasing with the mainnet.
Right. So I think one of course, the mainnet is the main thing, but we also want to have 2 kind of flagship products on top of it. So one is called the new kind of CDN, and the other one is the PubSub.
CDN is content
delivery network.
Yes.
So for people to speed up the video streaming, basically, right? So these 2, I think, will be in conjunction with the mainnet. The reason is one of the analogy we have been using quite a bit is Amazon didn't start with selling AWS, right? They started with selling books and CDs, which is not very sexy today, but that's kind of the PubSub and CDN, a new kind of CDN is like today. But once that kind of shows not only technology is viable, but also it can actually have commercial success, then I think it will attract more developers to build other type of application, network-centric application on top of our platform.
Well, and to your point earlier about having a holistic look at a solution, we wanted applications that everyday people could access and use, so they could actually get a feel for how things run on the NKN network.
I think for this year, I think we want to make sure the mainnet is actually performance and also very secure. Right. So there's still lots of things we will continue to work on for the second half of this year. And for the 2 products that we are launching, we want to generate real revenue, right? Because once those revenue will probably come in fiat, right? And then we can use those fiat to purchase the token and then to incentivize the miners further, right? Or the miners who will run those microservices, right? So then we enable kind of we call it a SaaS market, but it's a little bit too technical. But maybe like everybody can sell software service on our platform, right? That way, I think it's kind of medium to longer term view. Yeah. So if the product we launch are CDs and music, then I think this kind of software as a service market will become our Amazon Web Marketplace or AWS.
Yeah. So really teaching them, you can build revenue generating applications using our CDN, using our technology. How do you kind of engage with people that come to you with those kind of questions? What's the cycle?
So I think first we want to show them how to make money by making money from our own products, right? And then we can say, okay, see, we already have this model as a template. You can actually do something similar because our imagination is only limited to the small team we have, right? But your imagination is limitless. But without a template or example, then people's imagination will be too wild, and then they cannot focus, right? We'll say, okay, yes, you can do gambling on our platform, but that's not the main use case we'll target for. Right. We are networking centric, which you need a lot of kind of client-to-client communication. If it's real-time data or if it's like a low latency data, this is a perfect solution, right? But maybe not for like a financial fintech type of application.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank Alan and Bruce a lot for stopping by and joining the IoTalks podcast. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of NKN and IoTalks collaborations in the future.